The Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.
Hey, this is Captain Jonathan Moss with the Captain's Log Radio, and today, our tackle box tip presented by Icon Coolers. With me, I have Captain Chris Shultz from Fish Jacks Charters, and Chris has an important, awesome, exciting tip for us in regards to finding fish on the low tide, wintertime, low tide waters up in the Jacksonville, Northeast Florida area. Chris, what you got for me, buddy?
I think this really applies anywhere along the Southeast coast. You know, winter times, we get these negative low tides, and we also typically have a lot cleaner water. Summertime, you have more bacteria, more life in the water, more plankton. You also typically have more sediment because it's our rainy season. And so now we have this clean water, you have extra low tides. It's a great time to go look around and find new areas to fish. I don't mean necessarily new low tide spots, but it could be a new high tide spot. You'll find structure that you didn't know was there. All through main banks. And, when you get that, especially if you have a northwest wind, like a front's just came through on the same, it's already a negative tide. You throw a northwest wind on top of it, you might have 6 or 8 inches less water than you do on a regular, negative low tide. And it doesn't sound like much, but if you think about the shape of the bank, 6 inches can mean another 50 yards of bank in some spots.
Yeah.
And you'll find little hard bottom areas, little shell bars, even just like there's a boiler, for example, an old boiler from an old ship along the intercoastal, and you can't see it at all on a normal tide, but you can see the very top of it on those negative lows. And not only is it a hazard, you might smoke a lower unit on that thing, but it's structure. And at high tide, I've gone back and fished that spot and caught lots of fish.
Yeah.
And it's just in the middle of a giant flat that's nothing but mud and sand. And that bank for a mile and a half has nothing on it. And there's that one 3.5, 4 foot big chunk of metal, normally in like 6-7 foot of water on normal high tide. That's a good spot. That holds bait, that holds fish.
Yeah.
And so this time of year is just a great time of year for exploring areas that you might already know and finding those little new nuances that can just add one more step to your game.
I love that, man. Our units are so advanced. My Raymarine can see everything, but there's nothing better than getting out and exploring and learning and maybe finding things that your unit might miss, or you might miss you don't see on your unit. That's a great example, man. There's a spot that you wouldn't know about hadn't you gone out when it was a wintertime low, and that water is just a little bit lower, and you're able to see and learn more about your bottom and the structure around you. I love that. That's a fantastic tip, dude.
For trout in particular, so I just did this yesterday. I fished a spot that I found on a negative low for trout, because trout typically in our area will like a harder bottom. It doesn't have to be an oyster bar. It could be that hard sand, could be an old shell bar. Just they typically like a harder bottom area. You're more likely to catch trout over a hard bottom area. And there's an area that's a bunch of soft, puff mud in this creek. And there's a big outside bend, and it's puff mud, puff mud, puff mud. And then as soon as you come out of that bend and it starts to taper off, there's a shell bar that's like, 40 feet long, but it's normally in 6-8 feet of water, maybe 10 feet of water. And it wasn't dry, but I could see the color change coming over it. And I've side scanned that plenty of times and not noticed it on my side scan. I'll run through that channel side scanning looking for tarpon in the summer and never notice that subtle bottom change, because the mud's not that soft in that corner, and it doesn't create that big of there's no relief. There's no real defined transition. There's just more patchy shell and rock and stuff along that one little section. It's not big chunks of rock. It's mostly just little pieces of shell. And we caught 15, 20 trout in that spot yesterday morning. I'd never fished it before. Just wanted to go check it, marked the fish on the side scan when I came by it in the morning, so knew they were there, but they were sitting right on that hard bottom piece. There was half a mile probably of, not a half mile, there's 200 yards of mud in that little section, and that one 40-yard piece we caught 80% of the fish in.
Well, that is a testament to a few things. One, going out and trying something new. And number two, always wanting to learn. It's crucial when you're out on the water, you're always looking and paying attention and trying to learn something new. And here's an opportunity. You got the water is lower than normal. You have an opportunity to see something you might not normally notice or see. Take advantage of that. That is a absolutely fantastic tip, man. I appreciate the intel and I appreciate some education there. This is Captain Jonathan Moss with the Tackle Box tip presented by Icon Coolers and Captain Chris Shultz from Fish Jacks Charters up in Jacksonville. Thanks for an incredible tip, man. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Captain's Log Radio with your host, Captain Jonathan Moss.